Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So we are on a different setup. We're literally recording from a hotel room, so that's why the quality and visuals may be a little different here. But still, we gotta talk about some Diablo stuff because I love talking about this game. Anyways, today's topic at hand is Diablo's skill diversity in the endgame. Does it need a revamp? And this is something that I've briefly talked about, basically the core skills being the main focus of any Diablo build. And I wanted to see a little bit more innovation in the hopeful next season or in the expansion pack. More likely we'll get some new skills, but I wanted to go ahead and show off. There's this really great post by S.E. Alexander over on Reddit, and it's taking into consideration a lot of different websites, specifically D4 builds as well as Maxroll for viable endgame builds with certain classes. And we're going to tackle all of them, starting right now with the Barbarian. So what does the Barbarian have over here in most of the build guides for all of the endgame viable builds? It's basically triple shout, Wrath of Berserker, you have your basic attack, and then your generator as the last skill that has a little bit more flex. Well, let's be honest, most of the good players currently are still playing the Hammer of the Ancients, the Hoda Barb. But with Barb, I want to say they have a lot of really great core skills. You're seeing me just destroy with Double Swing. Now, obviously, yes, Double Swing is not nearly as great as Hoda, but it's still viable, right? There's a lot of builds that are just not even close to being viable in Diablo 4 because they're just simply not as good as others. Barbarian is in a little bit of a better spot because you can play Upheaval, you can play Double Swing, you can play Hoda. I think those are pretty much the best ones. But looking at the rest of the skill lineup here, is having triple shouts really going to be fun in the game? I mean, it's kind of hard to keep them up 100% of the time versus like in Diablo 3, you can basically select one and you select whatever rune and then you get to upkeep it most of the time. You activate it every single time it's down, but it lasts so long that it doesn't really feel like you need to consistently push the buttons for a very short duration. So I'm curious to know how you guys feel about that. As far as Barbarian goes, because the class itself has a lot of great core skills and it just does an insane amount of damage right now for season 2, that I would say it's in a relatively okay spot, but I would really like to see more gameplay use charge. It's really cool that you can like bring a target into the terrain and collide with it. You can use leap. Like, there's a lot of really cool things that like the Barbarian has in its identity that people just simply don't play because, well, what's the point when it doesn't do is, you know, this extra health regen, damage reduction, extra damage. All the rest of the shouts are arguably going to be better. And going into the next season, if nothing changes with any of the skills, well, people are just going to be running the same thing. So I think in terms of Barbarian, at least via my personal feedback as a Diablo partner, I think it'd be nice to see a little bit of a variety instead of triple shouts. Maybe you can only select one, but it's able to be kept a little bit longer. What do you guys think of that as far as a suggestion? Just to make it so we shift up the diversity in terms of not just the core skills, but like the way that the character is actually designed, because going further on in seasons and seasons later down the line, it's going to look kind of similar for the Barbarian, I would say, in the current state. Let's go ahead and check out the next class that I want to talk about, which is going to be the Druid. And let's go. I should have some Druid gameplay here. So this is a Shred Slide Druid. So with Druid, most builds will be playing a Hurricane. They also have the Wolf Howl, and they have the Cyclone armor, and then there's also Petrify. Petrify is like a long shot. They really just need to buff that Wolf ultimate. That thing is just not nearly as useful as the rest. And then we have the Bulwark, and then we have a little bit of mobility. The mobility is pretty weak on it, to be honest. As far as the Druid goes, the identity of the Druid, I would say, is actually in a pretty good spot, even though, like, comparing it to Barbarian, where we have, like, the triple shouts, right? I'd say Druid is in a much better spot for its playstyle and identity, because it wants you to transform into all of the different, animals. And the reason why is because a lot of the things will give you some sort of bonus that falls off really quick and you want to shapeshift. So honestly, I'd say Druid might be in one of the best spots because it incorporates all of these. Now, are people going to be getting tired of these skills? I don't know. I think out of all the potential in terms of the classes, Druid has some of the best potential because it counts skills as other skills. You can see I just pulled the enemies in with that like unique ring. I think that that's really fun too. So I would say as far as Druid goes, people will probably still play these core setups of skills. But does it get boring? Is it like bad in terms of a design? Compared to Barbarian where it's like triple shouts, I would say Druid's in a little bit of a better spot, but I'm curious to know, how do you guys feel about Druid in terms of like the skills that like almost everyone is playing? I mean, look at one that's getting some of the most play. It's only at 42% compared to like Barbarian. Yeah, it's night and day different. So I want to say Druid's actually in an okay-ish spot in terms of diversity because of the way the class is designed. There's just so many other builds that you can play. There's the pet variants that you can do. I know it's like double dipping with like the shred poison. There's a lot of things you can do with Druid. So I want to say Druid might be in like the best spot out of all of them. But I'm curious to know what your guys' thoughts. Now, as far as Sorceress goes, it's almost in the same situation as Barbarian. Like, there's no way you don't play teleport though. I don't think that they should ever make teleport not viable. That'd be a very bad decision. I would love for us to have like D2 teleport, but at the end of the day, it might just be too fast for the game. Then we're running like the double shields. And the thing that I actually find to be the most frustrating with the diversity in terms of Sorceress is that the only way to apply vulnerability is the Frost Nova. Now in Season 2, we got the new Vampiric power, so we didn't have to rely on that. But seeing that, that was like the only way, and like that was a really big problem, and one reason why I wasn't really a fan of Sorceress until this season. Let's go ahead and make sure we can go swap to, I got Sorceress in here, somewhere in here for gameplay. Okay, so let's get some sort gameplay here. So as far as it goes, yeah, I'd say teleport's fine. It's just the Frost Nova thing is not my favorite. As far as the other skills, whatever. It's usually you're going to have whatever core skill. Like right now, ball lining is one of the most popular things to play because it is very, very strong. But I think that they could maybe look at only running one of the shields and then having a more consistent way to apply vulnerability could allow a little bit more diversity because waiting for your Frost Nova to kind of tick, it's just not as, I would say, as fluid as some of the other classes in terms of applying vulnerability. Considering their version of exploit on the glyph, it doesn't have the automatic apply vulnerability. You can apply it with, let's say, Frozen Orb, but let's be honest, Frozen Orb is right now not the most popular thing, and then you'd have to use an enchant slot, and I think people will just look at other options, maybe just better CDR on Frost Nova if they just want us to continuously use that. I think there's just better options in terms of design than just using Frost Nova for our source vulnerability. But again, let me know your guys' thoughts on the Sorceress down below. I also feel like as far as the ultimates go, I really feel like the only viable one is the unstable currents. The rest, and I'm talking about like towards the end of the game, freezing things. I mean, you could just anything that can be frozen, you could just freeze anyways with again Frost Nova. So I'm not really wanting them to nerf Frost Nova. It's more so I want them to make it so there's other sources of vulnerability that may be a little bit more viable. All right, so next up over here, we're looking at the Necromancer. I think the Necromancer class actually needs the biggest rework in terms of its design. Because even though there's a lot of viable core skills, the rest of the skills, I mean, yeah, it's on like every single build because you put the Ring of Sacrilegious Soul, so we can have the Corpse Explosion and the Corpse Tendrils all kind of just go in. It's just a really big feature, and then also like the Blood Mist and then Crepify, and we have like the Bone Storm. I would say Necromancer, look at what they're playing. They're not even playing minions. Now, there was like a Twitter post, I believe it was by Adam Jackson, that posted something about what we should do with minions. So hopefully minions in Season 3 will get a massive buff because like no one's playing minions because it's not even that viable. You basically run these core set of skills, and then maybe you can play Blood Lance, maybe you can do Bone Spear, but for the most part, minions just don't seem to be the go-to for most people. And I would say that's one thing that's unfortunate with the Necromancer. So in terms of diversity, it's going to be kind of the same thing in terms of the skills, and it's kind of sad to see Necromancer in the way that it is, especially with its identity. I feel like Bone Spear is totally okay, though they did a good job with that, but there needs to be a little bit more viable options, especially in the minion department in the future. But I'd say that's like a really easy fix. Just allow us to kind of make more of a minion build. And the thing that I still want, even though like it's been several seasons, why don't we just have some sort of mobility with Necromancer? Like maybe Blood Mist, you can have some special thing where it lets you move way faster, but it has a way shorter cooldown and gives you like, I don't know, not invulnerability or something. Because in terms of the way it's designed, I don't think they really intended you to be able to be infinimisting, right? So I think that maybe that could be looked at in terms of design. Again, I'm not saying that they need to like delete it completely, but maybe just some sort of legendary power or aspect to make it so it doesn't give you like the invulnerability and invincibility, and instead it just gives you like a big boost of movements. Because I don't like playing Necromancer specifically for that reason. Even though like I've played every single class, I've maxed out all of them level 100. It's just one of my pet peeves with playing Necromancer. They just move so dang slow compared to the rest of the classes. And then we have one of my favorite classes in the Diablo series, aka the Rogue. I gotta move it down over here. So let's look at what Rogue actually has. So Rogue is pretty much always using the Shadow Step. I think that that's a really cool thing for its identity. I think the basic skill Puncture needs to be looked at, not necessarily nerf, just make the other options a little bit more appealing, especially with some of the range stuff. I think that could be a little bit better. But as of right now, since Tabalts exist, we don't really have to spam basic skills too often, with the exception of because of Tabalts, we have the combo points bug, which will probably get nerfed anyways. At that point, well, I don't know, people will probably still play Puncture because it's just one of the best things because it slows and applies the vulnerability. And then Dash just because it's so dang good. And then we have basically some imbues. As far as Rogue goes, I think Rogue is in an okay-ish spot because you can play Pen Shot, you can play other things in there. But Shadow Step, I really wanted that to be like an actual like build. There was like a aspect that you can throw on, and it lets you basically keep on teleporting and getting more and more damage, but it's not viable in the end game. But as far as it goes, I think honestly when I'm looking at like this list as a whole, and I'm curious to know what you guys would do with Rogue, because I think Rogue is kind of a harder thing to fix because with a lot of these suggestions, it would just be, well, just add more core skills for us to have a little bit more fun with. With Rogue in general, there should be like a trapper build. Like the Eyes in the Dark pants are absolutely a joke. And they've buffed them, I think, 2 or 3 times at this point, and still no one wants those. Those are terrible. I think for the Rogue, it'd be cool to have a pure trapper build. And they've had this thing called the Scoundrels like leather, but if you've used them, I think they're bugged. They don't really rock at like a perfect one has 80%. I think I have a 78. It doesn't even work at 78%. There's some sort of like internal cooldown on its proc or something, and it doesn't specify that. So I think there could be another identity for the rogue specifically to have a pure 100% trapper build. Maybe your traps have 0 cooldown, the rest of your skills do no damage, so you can play that trapper fantasy. But looking at all of these, I mean, like these are relatively high numbers. Again, these are like viable endgame builds. Obviously, yes, you can play whatever you want to, but realistically, looking at what everyone is basically playing at the end of the day, they could probably look at this and say, well, these are just performing really well. I'm not saying to nerf them. I think if you want your players to be happy because they probably learned from Season 0, yeah, nerfing things does not make people very happy and excited to play a game. When they go in, they expect one thing and they get another. So I think another great suggestion would be to look at the skills that are seeing like less than like, maybe 5% gameplay at the end of the game and start buffing them up so they can at least be more appealing to go ahead and try in terms of skill diversity in Diablo 4. Would really love to see that. But anyways, that's my thoughts. I would love to know yours down below, guys. But if you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like on it. If you're new here, you want to see more Diablo content, hit subscribe, and you'll definitely see more very soon. And we'll be on the setup for, just as a heads up, for like a couple weeks. Well, it depends on how good the Wi-Fi is at certain areas, so I can still give you guys some awesome content. But it will go back to normal, like quality and content soon. It's just that, yeah, some areas don't have the best connection. So when there's time, we will be making more Diablo videos. But anyways, thanks for tuning in. Let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.